Let's read Romans chapter 1 verse 28. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind. So, who walks in rejection here? Is it God or those that persist against him? Well, the answer is obvious. Those that persist against him, they do so because they don't want to give God the proper honor he deserves as Lord and Savior. Why? Because they're holding on to other things that are not compatible with the truth. So when relief seekers persist in the relief seeking, no matter what, they become mentally disturbed. Now, not everyone that's mentally disturbed is because they are holding on to negativity. Some people are just victimized and they need to process things and think they haven't processed things properly. Okay, so understand the difference. But those who persist in the negative, eventually their minds become debased. That means that their minds can't function properly at all. Not because of trauma that they haven't processed well, but because they are in this state of self-destruction that they refuse to acknowledge. Okay? Now, when you notice that someone is entering this state, just realize that it will go from bad to worse. I'm not saying that someone with a reprobate mind can't be saved and they can't be redeemed. Yes, they can. And there are those who do become saved and redeemed. Just realize that when people enter this state of the reprobate mind, they've become dangerous. They have shifted from being people that need to be rescued to becoming people you need to be rescued from. They have changed from, well, not changed, but they shifted from endangered people to dangerous people. And there's one thing I want you to understand here. Human beings are now in a fallen state. Believers are renewed, so they're not sinners anymore, they are righteous. Nevertheless, they still operate in a fallen world. So believers ought to be renewed in their mind so they can walk in the newness of life as Christ intends it. Now, understand that in human interaction, it can never be that it's always you that's the cause of all the problems. Look, if you have an attitude that's self-destructive and you are in denial of it, then every time you interact with people, this attitude will manifest. So people can address that attitude you're denying, okay? That's correct. But even if you have an attitude that's self-destructive, I don't support it, neither do I condone it, but let's say you have an attitude that's self-destructive, where it's denial or you withdraw very quickly, whatever it is. That does not mean that you are the one causing all the problems. That's not possible. First of all, you are a vulnerable being, you have limited capacities, and you are a needy creature. That means you need water, food, clothes, human interaction. And besides being vulnerable and needy, you also have a mortal body that makes you more weaker. So how could it be that a creature so vulnerable as you and so weak as you can cause all the problems all the time? That is not possible. Especially if you were a child. Especially if you were in your early teenage years. Childhood till your mid-teens, you are, let me say like this. Once you enter your early teens, you now begin to develop your critical capacities in the sense that now you begin to develop that part of your mind where you can examine things, where you can look at the bigger picture. Before that, you're not that intelligent. Okay? Before that, you can't think in complex ways. You can't. That's the thing with children, you can't think in complex ways. So a child can never be a predator. A child can never be a narcissist. A child can never be a reprobate. Impossible. Because reprobation implies a persistent resistance against the obvious. Reprobation implies a persistent resistance, which becomes self-destructive. And reprobation implies foremost that you are so self-focused that nothing, absolutely nothing else outside of you matters to you. You treat everything else as an extension of your expectations. That's what reprobation is. And even if you have a full-blown reprobate somewhere, that reprobate is still a human being. He or she is still a needy, vulnerable creature. So they are able to spread destruction and harm, but only to the extent that the community around them enables them. Okay? It happens that such self-destructive creatures spread harm and violence. It happens every day. But how could it be that they're able to do this over a long period of time without being stopped? It is because they are enabled. Okay? So, if you have a reprobate somewhere, and the reprobate is into smear campaigns all the time, the only reason because women also do this, the only reason she can continue like that without facing consequences is because the people around her enable it or just don't want to deal with it. So in this case, it's not just the reprobate that's the issue, it's also the people around that enable it. Or let's say you have a group of people and they deal with dysfunctional behavior, but they don't deal with the root of the dysfunction. In that case, they may feel good about themselves, acting out against a manifestation of an issue, but they don't go to the root. To deal with the root of it, they just distract themselves to be relieved. Why am I saying all of this? Because I want you to consider the following. If you have people that are always upset with you, every time they are angry or they feel distressed or they feel unhappy, it's your fault. You are dealing with people that are projecting onto you. If you were a child, I'm not saying it happened to you, but let's say it did happen, and you had certain individuals around you that always were angry with you, and you couldn't understand why. I'm telling you what's going on. That individual is avoiding life. He or she doesn't want to face things. So the only option left for them is to dump negativity on others. So the only they're left with is victimization. So they've settled for victimization. And you were an easy target because you couldn't properly look for a way out. Because you didn't have much options, you were an easy target. So it had nothing to do with you. It all had to do with them. And this is what I want you to understand also, even as an adult. It can't always be that you are the cause of all the unhappiness around you. That is not possible. It's not possible. Look, reprobates do harm. Okay? And enablers enable it. So in this case, it's the collective that's wrong. But what happens in the world when the collective, let's say when the dirt of the collective becomes visible, they now relocate it to the victims. That's how they do it. That's how that community avoids dealing with their own. And you were not a reprobate. Let's say you were not a reprobate. You were not an evildoer. You weren't any of that. You were just a common dysfunctional human being, a sinner. How could it be that people see you as the cause of all their problems? That's not possible. I'm just telling you as it is. It is not possible. Look, just reflect back. If you remember people that always blamed you unconditionally, everything you said or did was taken in a negative daylight, It's because they were projecting onto you. This whole thing of I don't like someone or I can't stand someone, that's projection. That's an individual not wanting to face their own expectations. So to hide the frustration or to prevent from being exposed for what they are, someone with a narcissistic attitude, they now have to blame it on someone else. They have to put someone else in negative daylight to justify their avoidance from reality, to justify their refusal to take responsibility. Just think about it. People like that, who always project, who always have their reasons for what they do, they always have some type of justification that doesn't add up. And they can't stand it when you challenge them. They may even become angry, upset, and may even explode. You may not even feel safe around such people. When you're dealing with someone like this, you are dealing most likely with someone that has a reprobate mind. It's not someone that has a mental issue that requires help. You're dealing with someone that's dangerous. Some of you had such folks around you. They were relatives or friends or people at school or people at the workplace. Whoever they are, realize you're dealing most likely with someone that has a reprobate mind. That means their minds are debased. So you can't expect someone with a reprobate mind to operate or to function in a proper manner. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't operate in a proper manner. They should. But because they're reprobates, because they are in pathological refusal towards their own vile expectations, because they have expectations that don't add up, but they don't want to see it. They are in pathological denial. And because they are in pathological denial, they now have to flee all the time. And the way they manage to flee is by dumping the negativity on others so that the negativity does destroy them. So they are in a survival mode. The only issue here is that there is no actual danger coming after them. They are the dangerous ones. Yet they project the danger that they've become onto others by pretending to be the victims all the time. When you're dealing with someone like this, you are dealing with someone with a reprobate mind. So recognize a reprobate mind when you are, recognize a reprobate mind when you encounter it. For real. Not able to recognize a reprobate mind can have fatal consequences. Just understand the following. Not everyone that's stubborn, not everyone that acts like a jerk, not everyone that's mean is a reprobate. Most people that display dysfunctional or even self-destructive behavior, they're just people that need help as soon as possible. Okay? Some need very professional help. So you understand what I'm saying here. But you also have this category of people who are not endangered, they are the danger. So recognize them when you see them. And this brings me to another thing. If I'm going to give one parable now. Let's say that I had to undergo surgery to remove an infection or some internal bleeding or something from my body. What happens? I go to the hospital and I undergo surgery and just stay there for a week or two. Then, when my body has healed, they send me home. Because a hospital is meant for sick people to get help. In Dutch, a hospital is called ziekenhuis. Ziek in Dutch means sick. Huis means house. That's similar to English. So ziekenhuis, a house of the sick or a house for the sick. That's the description of an hospital. In German is Krankhaus or Krankenhaus, depending on the place, depending on the German dialect that you speak. Krank means sick, Haus means house. So, a hospital, by the way, the name hospital comes from a Roman Catholic order from the Middle Ages. So you know where it's from. But anyway, so a hospital is meant for people that are sick, that need help. Okay? So I can expect to see you at a hospital as a patient, or you're part of the staff, whether you're the doctor or just people that keep the place going, or you are a visitor visiting a friend or someone that is in hospital. But if you are not sick, if you're not a doctor, and if you're not assisting the doctor by being part of the staff, or you're not visiting someone that's laying there, then you have no business being at nor near any hospital. Let's say someone tells you that he had, large tumors in their body, multiple tumors, and that they are now healed, that they are now healthy. But you find out later that they're going to the hospital every weekend. Or you find out that someone is going to the hospital every weekend, and that same individual that goes to the hospital every weekend tells everyone that they are healthy, they are all right, they have recovered, and all of that. Now, anyone who uses half of their brain cells would look at the situation and say, hold on a minute. A hospital is meant for those that are sick to get help. Of course, you need people that aren't sick to assist them, but sick people go to the hospital. So how could it be that you are healthy, but you go to the hospital every weekend? You're not working there. You don't have relatives or any friends that lay there. You don't part of the staff, because if you're part of the staff, you'll be working more hours. How come you have to go to the hospital every weekend, but you're healed, but you've recovered? Even a small child whose brain cells are still in development, whose brains are quite tiny, even a small child can look at the situation and say, Mommy, Daddy, this man or this woman is lying. A hospital is for sick people, right, Dad? So Dad or Mom, how could it be that this sir or this man keeps going to the hospital while she's okay? Even a small child can see through it. Now here's where I'm heading with this parable. You have those people that claim to follow Christ, yet they don't walk in Christ's strength. They go to this building every Sunday. Some do it on the Sabbath, that's Saturday. But they go to this building every weekend. But over time, that means throughout the years, there is no breakthrough, there is no deliverance, there is no real long-term beneficial change happening to them. They are just relieved from common threats. That is joblessness, homelessness, loneliness. So some things they are relieved from, but they're stuck going to that building every weekend. And during the week, they have to toil and be exhausted like every other wage slave. While they claim to follow the Lord and Savior who came to give us life in abundance. So hold on a minute. You claim you're following the Lord, who's above everyone, who came to give us life in abundance, but you're not operating a life in abundance, and you go to a building every weekend to hear about this man who's about to give you life in abundance, but the life in abundance never comes, but you keep on going. Now, there are people who have been traumatized, and that's why they can't see it. But even people that are traumatized, eventually the trauma wears them out and they'll hit rock bottom and they realize, hold on a minute, something isn't right here. It's similar to a pathological liar lying to you all the time, but you are so in denial. You're so in this tunnel vision that you just don't want to process that you're being lied to. You're being lied to, but you become accustomed to being lied to. So now, because of the predictability of being scammed, you're now attached to being scammed. Now, if you encounter an individual that has become attached to being scammed, they are keeping themselves in danger. They're keeping themselves in harm's way, and they're enabling danger and harm to the community. So their self-destructive attitude needs to be shut down because they're causing harm to everyone. Yet, when it comes to pagan Christianity, many just can't see that they are being scammed. Now, as I mentioned before, trauma eventually wears you out and you hit rock bottom. And that's a good thing. I'm not saying the trauma is a good thing, but it's a good thing that you hit rock bottom, because then you are forced to face things. And when you're forced to face things, you're close to the solution. Hitting rock bottom often is part of the solution. It's often part of your deliverance process also. But if you have folks that just never are able to see that they're being scammed, something is terribly wrong with them. And I'm saying automatically that they have a reprobate mind. That may be the case. But even if they're not reprobates, something is terribly wrong with them. And you need to recognize that. I'm going to repeat. When people, over a long period of time, just cannot grasp nor process, you can't even mention or hint to them that they have been scammed or that they're being scammed in an obvious way. If the scam is obvious, because you just can't avoid it because it's into your face, but you just can't notice it, something is terribly wrong with them. And if the Holy Spirit does not lead you, do not confront such an individual about it. Because even if they don't have a reprobate mind, even if they're just people who are endangered, they are endangered. And if the danger that endangers them is so toxic, you may harm yourself by trying to open their eyes. So, always agree with Christ and be at peace.